She sits in the heart of downtown Orillia, a proud building with castle-like features and a fairy tale past. However, the Orillia Opera House is probably best defined by the thousands of people who have entered her doors since they first opened in 1895.
If these walls could talk, the stories they could tell, of magical performances, standing ovations, curtain calls, and first dates. And the mysteries of secret underground tunnels and mythical piano-playing ghosts. This is the Orillia Opera House, center stage. The history of the Orillia Opera House actually begins right here, near the waterfront at Couchiching Beach Park, for this was where Orillia's first farmers' market was once located. When Orillia was incorporated as a village in 1867, council meetings and market meetings were held at the Orillia Temperance Society Hall, which was located along here on Matchedash Street.
Council was dissatisfied with both the Market Square location and their temporary town hall. Around that same time, landowner Gould Smith would donate a half-acre lot to the village at the corner of Mississauga and West Street, providing they used it for a market square and providing council would be responsible for clearing the stumps from some additional land he owned on Mississauga Street.
Village councillors wanted to construct the new town hall on location and lockup, while the farmers wanted a wooden shed. In the end, and after much feuding, both facilities were built.
However, in 1887, it was proposed that council chambers and the market shed should be replaced by one structure, and a grand one it should be. On November 26, 1895, the newly constructed Orillia Opera House was officially opened. The price tag to taxpayers, $25,000. David Fanstone was the manager of the Orillia Opera House from 1986 to 2001. Following that position, he became the director and coordinator of the resident theater company, the Sunshine Festival. Fanstone says the castle-like features of the Opera House are not just about aesthetics.
The most interesting thing about the architecture is that the walls are 24 inches thick. And the reason why they're that thick is they were built out of local brick, which is called soft brick. So the brick was interlaced, and when you get to the exterior walls or any load-bearing wall, the walls are as thick as they are in a castle in England. Thanks very much.
You're welcome, sir.
We're in the foyer of the Orillia Opera House. This is where people come to wait before the show goes up. There's a new addition on the front that lets more people do that, because before they had to stand in the rain. And the box office has changed from in the wall here to this larger and hopefully more comfortable version here. Now, the interesting thing about the foyer is that you might think this is wallpaper, but it's not. It's actually a sponge applique, and they had to do it everywhere on this wall. All these fleur-de-lis were put on by hand, a few at a time. So now let's go upstairs and take a look at the auditorium. Now we're upstairs in the Gordon Lightfoot Auditorium. It was dedicated to Gordon for all the good works he's done for the community of Orillia. There's a lot of changes in here. The seats have been replaced, the walls have been insulated, new rug, a new paint job, all done in 1997 on a public works grant from the province.
Of all of the performers, entertainers, musicians, and actors that have graced the Opera House stage, no one is more admired and loved by the residents of Orillia than hometown boy, singer-songwriter Gordon Lightfoot. Over his illustrious musical career, Lightfoot has returned home numerous times to perform for his adoring friends, family, and fans. In 1997, the 700-seat auditorium was officially named the Gordon Lightfoot Auditorium, but it wasn't Lightfoot's early musical performances that were his first recollections of the Orillia Opera House.
The movies really is what I remember most, because we were thrilled about the movies. It was Hopalong Cassidy and Roy Rogers and that real core of old westerns that I'm talking about here. You know, we had all of our childhood friends, and we would team up and go to the movies. Really, at a very early age, it was really one of the first places really that we were allowed to come to at that point was here to the Opera House, to some kind of public event like that. I would usually pick the main floor. Every once in a while I'd get daring and go and sit up in the balcony. I was very young.
It was Lightfoot's mother, Jessie, who encouraged her son to follow a musical path, occasionally having him sing for her ladies' club. Shortly afterwards, young Gordon joined the St. Paul's United Church Junior Choir as a boy soprano, which subsequently led to his first public appearance at the Orillia Opera House.
There was a talent contest that was run through CFOR, and for a couple of years they ran it from right here in the Opera House over the airwaves. And my first experience was at age 10 when I sang Bless This House here on this very stage.
For the next 3 years, Lightfoot competed in the Kiwanis music festivals in Orillia, winning the Boys Open category for Unchanged Voices, which paved the way for his first appearance at Toronto's Massey Hall. Years later, Gordon Lightfoot, international superstar, would perform again at Massey Hall. These performances would become a spring ritual for his admiring fans. Throughout his teenage years, Lightfoot would continue to perform at the Orillia Opera House with various vocal groups.
Yes, there were a couple of quartets, and we too competed. I was always competing in something, and we had concerts, really barbershop concerts here in the Opera House. And at one point, we had the most famous barbershop quartet in North America was here, the Buffalo Bills. But here we would stand, and I mean, I love coming out on this stage. Everything is just so beautifully proportioned and everything.
It was Saturday, September 7th, 2002. Gordon Lightfoot was to perform his second night of concerts at the Orillia Opera House, a benefit for hometown fans, when something went terribly wrong.
The thing that I remember most is I was on the floor at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That is all that needs to be said. The band was ready to do a sound check. My sister walked in. We called the doctor. They took me to emergency here in Orillia. They gave me a shot at 6:30 in the evening, and I don't remember another thing until Halloween, till 6 weeks later.
Lightfoot's artery had burst in his midsection. He had suffered an abdominal hemorrhage. He considered himself lucky to be alive.
With a case of straight mechanical failure like that, you can recover from it completely if you put your mind to it, and I feel fine. I did 53 concerts this year. The only thing that can stop us now would be some kind of a health issue. I enjoy helping to support the old building with the concerts that we do, and it will remain here, and I hope that more people get a chance to show and exercise their talent here, because it's a wonderful old building.
When the Opera House was first constructed, the auditorium contained a wraparound balcony common to the formal opera houses of Europe, which may have contributed to its name. It has since been replaced with a deeper balcony that faces the stage. The ground floor housed the market and the council chambers, now the studio theater, located directly below the main stage. The exterior boasted 2 round towers at the east end and a tall square tower on the south side over the entrance to council chambers. That tower is no longer there. On July 15, 1915, fire gutted much of the building. Only the heavy masonry walls, the basement floor, and the main floor structure remained. Even the clock tower was lost.
The neatest feature that's gone that I would love to raise money to get back is the turrets used to look like Disneyland. They were concave. When they went up to the top, they weren't straight from the bottom to the top, they were actually concave. And they did have flag staves on the top that some poor benighted soul had to climb up and tie the flag to. But I imagine it was really something when it was all like it was built, because it was just much more a fairy tale than it is now.
It was never known how the fire actually started, although some Orillia residents had a theory.
There's one very funny rumor about it, and that is that everybody was running around looking for German saboteurs. It was such a big fire and such a big thing for Orillia. A lot of people thought that it couldn't have happened on its own, that it would have been part of the First World War, and they were hieing and hoeing and protecting local buildings, shipbuilding buildings and stuff like that, because they were sure it was sabotage.
A few months after the fire, the town asked the taxpayers for approval to authorize a $50,000 debenture to rebuild the Opera House. Residents said no, the price was considered too costly, especially in a time of war.
So the town decided to trim some of the reconstruction plans, which meant, among other things, the tower that used to be on the south side of the building would not be replaced. Total cost now, $35,000. On March 1st, 1917, the Orillia Opera House reopened. The feature that evening was the English pantomime Aladdin and His Wonderful Lamp.
Something's been bothering Orillia resident Wendy Hutchings for a long time now. For many years, she's been on a quest to uncover the truth behind the rumors of the existence of secret underground tunnels running below the streets and buildings of Orillia, specifically the Orillia Opera House. And if they did exist, what were they used for?
I'm looking at a blueprint. I believe it's from 1915 of the basement of the Opera House. And, over the years there's been talk of a tunnel possibly that went through from the Opera House over to the brewery over at Fred's Meat Market. So one is kind of looking to see if there was any entrance that might have been blocked up. So this is the basement, part of the basement of the Opera House. These are the original old, very thick walls. And if there had been a tunnel many years ago, it would have to have been somewhere, I think, along right here somewhere, because Fred's Meat Market, where the brewery was, is over in that direction. Here's Mississauga Street. And there's really no other place for it to have been, I don't believe, if there had been a tunnel.
The brewery that Hutchings is referring to was once the site of the Orillia Brewing and Malting Company. It was closed in 1916 when Orillia decided to go dry. Now the location of Fred's Meat Market, some say the tunnel ran directly from the council chambers into the basement of the old brewery.
This could have been another entrance because this faces Mississauga, and again the brewery's just down there. So for those that might like to believe that, this would have led directly into the council chambers.
Could it be that Orillia city fathers would slip undetected through these dark caverns under the street and into the basement of the old brewery for a taste of the demon's rum? Or perhaps they had it delivered via this route. It was a time of prohibition, after all.
Well, there's the brewery, Fred's Meat Market, and this is the council chambers. And if there had been a tunnel, it would have to have gone on an angle like this and on quite an uphill road too, as you can see. That would have been the malt house, which is now West End Cleaners. And now we're going to go into Fred's Meat Market, the old brewery.
Add to the suggestion that the basement of the old brewery might have been a house of ill repute, and things get really interesting.
There's the tunnel.
But this tunnel is running parallel to Mississauga Street towards the building next door.
The tunnel would have to veer off, presumably out through one of the outside walls, from either from here, if it went off from here, or out beyond the West End Cleaners.
This tunnel actually had a functional use when the building served as a brewery. Whiskey barrels were rolled between the brewery building and the neighboring malt house simply because it made things much more convenient.
I really don't think there was a tunnel that went across, although it would be fun if there had been. And as far as the body house or whatever, I think probably a lot of men did sit and drink here, happy hour, whatever you want to call it, but I think that's probably as far as it went, but I don't know.
Still, with all the stucco and patchwork applied to the basement walls here and on those of the Orillia Opera House walls, who knows what's behind them? In that sense, the mythical tunnels lying underneath Orillia streets and buildings remain solidly intact. Wendy Hutchings' quest continues. After the official reopening in 1917, the Opera House continued to serve as the center of local culture for Orillians. The building became primarily a cinema with live entertainment, giving way to silent films in the mid-20s. Since the Opera House was being used as a movie theater, rehearsals for any stage production were held wherever space could be found. When the new Geneva Theatre opened its doors in the early 40s, the hectic pace set at the Opera House began to slow down.
There was a community theater group that used it, and there was choirs and bands and things like that, and they were the only people who used it. And it was actually down to the point that if you wanted to use the building and they knew who you were, you just went over to City Hall and got the key, and when you were done, you gave it back.
Terry Rideout was the volunteer stage technician for the Orillia Opera House back in the late 70s. He remembers a time when one individual did indeed borrow the keys to check out the grand old building.
I was going back to the garage around 4 o'clock one afternoon, and I knew there was nobody supposed to be in the Opera House and there was lights on, so I went in to investigate. When I came into the Opera House, I heard piano music. Opened the doors and there was a piano on the stage with a person sitting at it. I found out it was Glenn Gould.
Rideout then turned up the lights, much to the delight of the legendary pianist.
Then he would play a piece, record it, and then sit and listen to it, and then make some changes. And he sat right here in this chair, and we chatted about Melbourne Collegiate, where he went and my wife Pauline went. And we talked about music, and I guess I was here for about an hour, and I had a private concert with Glenn Gould.
The year was 1981, 1 year before Glenn Gould's death. The recordings he made that day at the Orillia Opera House are still in existence. By the mid-70s, the Opera House was in need of extensive repairs. The building simply was not up to safety standards. At one point, every production had to be accompanied by 3 off-duty firefighters, 1 backstage and 2 in the auditorium.
So Orillians were given a choice: either demolish the old building and replace it with a more modern, efficient one, or raise funds and begin phase 1 of the restoration plan to keep history alive. History won.
They met for the first time on the main street of Orillia, in front of what was then the Star Cafe. It was January 1946. Bob McEown and Barbara Gador were going out on a blind date.
And that first I met him was standing right here. And the other 2 couples, they took off and up the street to go to the show, to the Opera House. And Bob nobody introduced us or anything. And then he just grabbed my arm and said, "Come on, I don't like this any better than you do." And away we went, and here we are.
That was the beginning of the end.
Oh dear, that's so long ago.
62 years ago, as a matter of fact, the young couple rather reluctantly went out on their first date to see a movie at the Orillia Opera House.
Here we are again. We saw a state fair. I doubt very much whether Bob remembers this or not.
Dan
But
Andrews was in it.
oh, okay. And but I'll tell you, for someone that I just met for the first time, the little devil kissed me in the show. Yeah, I did.
I did?
Yes, you did.
A first kiss, a long courtship, and many more dates at the Orillia Opera House. Bob and Barb McEown were married on August 7th, 1954.
I really can't say that there's anything that I would change. No. We went together for 8 years after that first show. We went together for 8 years before we were married. No, I wouldn't change anything. I think we've done it the right way.
As long as you enjoy life, that's what it's all about, I guess. And we seem to have a good time. We're still stuck together anyway. No regrets.
Following the Phase 1 renovation, the Opera House once again became the center of activity for the community.
It became a theater again. The community group started to use it a lot, and then following them were things like Albert Greer and the Cellar Singers. Community concert series was in here. Mariposa Arts Theater used to do 3 shows upstairs. At its height in '95, which took like almost 20 years, we had more than 1 event a day.
Former high school teacher Ken Brown's love of theater has brought him to the Opera House countless times. Throughout the years, Brown has performed in numerous productions with Orillia's Mariposa Arts Theatre and even directed a few.
Light a rose, I'm home again, Rose. Do 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 do. You see, I've forgotten the words already.
But his fondest memories come from the high school productions that he was involved with in the early 70s with Park Street Collegiate Institute.
I really enjoy, and I enjoyed working with the high schools because here's where it all starts. You know, when you can get these kids who are 12, 14, 16, 20 even, get them, give them a feel for what it means to be on stage and the discipline required. It's immeasurable. You know, it's a funny thing about teaching students. You see them when they're 12, 16, so on, and then you meet them about 20 years later. And of course, they've put on a little weight and probably grown hair all over their face. And they say, "You remember me, don't you?" And I'm afraid not. You're going to have to help me here.
Hey, Ken. How you doing? Good to see you again. How you been? You're looking well? So we're back in the Opera House.
MP Bruce Stanton has come back to the Opera House to share some memories with Ken Brown. Stanton, a former student at Orillia's Park Street Collegiate Institute, also has some cherished memories of when he and Brown shared the stage together in the high school music production of The Music Man. It was 1972.
This is the Wall of Fame, of course, and there's the whole backstage here at the Opera House is actually full with these names, and of course they've had to stop allowing that because there's a bit of history here with all the various players. Right, this is the section that has Oliver from 1974, and there's a lot of these folks whose faces come to mind as soon as you see the name again. The two big things for me was the musicals and when I was in grade 10 and 11, and also band. I mean, so on the music side and theater really, you know, was the main agenda for us, those that were involved in the cast from mid-September right through till the end of January when we had our shows, and it was an incredible operation. It was the time outside of school that you really looked forward to, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun, and it was really good discipline, I think, for us then. And during the shows, this whole place would be packed. 3 rooms, all with costumes, and people packed wall to wall. I don't know how we did it, actually. I remember in one of the shows, I actually got a little bit of applause as I did stage exit, and I was pretty happy about that. Still remember it to this day.
In 1995, the Orillia Opera House celebrated its 100th birthday. Since its beginnings in 1895, the grand old building has seen many changes to her interior and exterior. But the one thing that has remained a constant in all of those years is the Orillia Farmers Market. One of the longest running markets in Ontario, its attachment to the Orillia Opera House is steeped in tradition, a Saturday morning tradition that continues today. Lillian Stamper has been selling her crafts at the farmers market for 37 years, continuing a tradition that her mother and grandparents established many years ago. For Lillian, the market means a lot more than making a sale.
It gets everybody together on Saturday morning. We have our mayor coming in to see us every week, and we have people that have been coming for years that come just for their sausage on a bun or whatever, and get their few groceries, and back home they go again. It's friendly. Everybody's got a smiling face. Everybody's friendly.
Friendly, too, are the so-called ghosts that inhabit the Orillia Opera House.
It has been said that the presence of these spirits was so prevalent in the building at one time that people refused to work alone, not because of fear, but because of frustration from constant interruptions.
Many stories have been told about the piano-playing ghost who holds impromptu concerts for anxious and unsuspecting stagehands and technicians.
The piano playing is quite common in this opera house. I'm sure all the techies have stories about piano playing and going in there and not finding a thing. You know, the lights could be on, the lights could be off. and that's it. There's just a lovely little piano, and then you walk in, and there's nothing there.
Very strong draw if we go straight in, straight ahead, and I'm not sure what's there, but I keep wanting to veer that way and veer that way as far as where the energies are located.
Deborah Johnson is a clairvoyant and medium. We brought her to the Opera House to see if she could shed some light on the possible existence of ghosts and spirits that frolic within the building.
I'm hoping that we may pick it up, but I keep wanting to go to the piano. I'm hearing in here that there's piano keys that are being played, so there's something in that area that will be quite fascinating for us to delve into and see if we can actually pick up either sound or some images there as we go through. I bring the tape recorder with me because quite often you'll pick up sounds behind the scenes that you won't hear audibly, but they'll be picked up on the tape recorder. So what I wanted to do, I came in, my very first impression as to which area had a very strong draw for me. I kept being told piano, and I would want to ask if that's something that's heard in here is the piano, somebody playing the piano, but really there isn't anybody there playing it.
As we wandered around to different areas of the Opera House, it became apparent to Johnson that there was definitely something here of the spiritual nature.
It's comparable to having a vibration shift or change, so you can just feel it's almost like static or a little bit higher vibration. That's what I'm picking up down here. It's a woman in her 50s, possibly early 60s, gray hair, has a bit of wave or a bit of curl to it, light-colored eyes, glasses, very connected to the church. Initial G coming through. But it's interesting because I keep wanting to pace back and forth here, back and forth. I love of his profession. There's tremendous pride. He used to stand like this or like this whenever he was watching a performance. Always.
In the end, Johnson picked up 5 different energy sources in various parts of the building. We were not able to confirm or deny the identity of the people she described, but then again, 113 years is a long time.
I don't know if you'd have it in the record books or not, but somebody had a heart attack and died up here. It's a man.
No piano sounds were audible on the tape, which ran for about 45 minutes, but Deborah Johnson heard them, and so too have many others. From piano-playing ghosts to mythical tunnels running underneath the Opera House, the question of their existence is unclear. But what is clear are the plans and preparations to take the grand old building into the future. After a new entrance was constructed in 1958, many felt the look was out of place with the rest of the building's architecture. A return to a centennial front is in the works, bringing it back to its Victorian splendor.
I don't like to boast or brag or ramble, but we do play in some pretty fine venues around North America, and there probably would be none more important than here at Massey Hall.
This is where they came for years and years and years and years for everything, and the voting council. It's got a history that locks it into the community very tightly, and people are happy to know it's here even if they're not regular theater goers.
And the people love this building. Should anything ever happen to this building, there will be a hue and cry.
In the early 1980s, while preparing to do some renovations on the Opera House, a jail cell was discovered deep in the basement. Upstairs in the main auditorium, thousands of names etched on the backstage walls tell another story. And survivors, 3 birch trees that withstood the Great Fire of 1915. 2 of them have died and the other is nearing its end. A plan is in place to have them carved into artistic figures relating to the Opera House.
They are reminders of the past, a past that hopefully the next generation of musicians, entertainers, audiences, and families that come through these doors will embrace, and who someday will have their own story to tell about the Orillia Opera House.